PC Perspective's coverage of CES 2015 is brought to you by Logitech. See the latest gaming peripherals at gaming.logitech.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast Special Edition from CES Day 3. Day 3.
More like 5, but it's fine.
Well, yeah. Friday I don't think counts. Saturday we didn't do a show, so it doesn't count. Only days that count are days we podcast. That's how I live.
Okay.
The only days that matter are when I get to talk with Josh and Alan.
Yeah.
On podcasts.
Oh, I'm sad.
It's actually, today was the actual first day of the show, right?
Yeah,
I believe so.
Today is Tuesday, by the way. Thank you guys for joining us live. If you are PCPro.com/live, we record the show there. We've got a chat room. You can hang out, ask us questions, make fun of us, do whatever you do. And then, of course, PCPro.com/subscribe if you want to know when we are going live with events. I actually gave people like 45 minutes notice this time.
Yeah.
Which is way better than we had the last times. And it's earlier. We're actually recording this at 10:45 Eastern time, which is like our normal start time, if you think about it, for a podcast. So there's that. And PCPro.com/podcast. That's the normal stuff. Normally, well, whatever. Anyway, if you're listening to this, chances are you've heard a podcast before. So welcome. So let's dive into what we did today. Starting with, let's go to Asus. We actually went over to their suite. We saw most of the same stuff. We talked a lot about it yesterday, so we don't need to follow up on it. We saw the Transformer Chi. Yeah.
Transformer Book Chi.
Transformer Book Chi. I knew there was a word I was forgetting there. Saw the phones. They had some new networking stuff that was actually kind of interesting. They had...
Sauron helped design the antennas.
No joke. There was an AC repeater that looked like the Borg or
David Hewlett ZPM.
Yeah. We had some cool stuff there. They didn't have any like motherboards or graphics cards to show off. They did show off obviously the PG27AQ monitor, which is that 4K IPS G-Sync panel that they announced yesterday that we talked about yesterday. Got to see it in person. It wasn't. I guess they had one running an actual game and one running a video, so we did get to see it actually running, but didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with it. That is a second half of the year product still with an unknown price tag. And I know a lot of people that are interested in it. I would be way more interested in it if I knew the price was not $1,000 or something like that.
You can't put a price on perfection.
You can, and I do all the time. Actually, that's how I sell me, guys.
Yeah.
So I don't need to spend any more time on that because I feel like we talked about it yesterday and I didn't spend enough time with it.
But did you find Incredible there?
I did.
I mean, they've been searching for it.
He was in the back and he wasn't allowed out. Hi phone. They also, I didn't get to see it. We wanted to see the new MG monitor, who I keep saying that because I can't remember the full model number. Mm-hmm. The MG, which is the 120 hertz IPS 25x14 monitor that may support adaptive sync technology, not FreeSync necessarily, but adaptive sync, variable refresh stuff.
But they kept hiding the monitor from you.
They kept hiding it. And
I'm not sure it exists.
I'm not sure it exists either. They emailed me later and said, hey, I'm really sorry. A couple of other press people got to see it before you. Don't be mad. Because I was the instigator of trying to find, like, I was like, yeah, ROG, yeah, I got it. This is the one I want to see.
For shame.
So we're going to go back there tomorrow, hopefully, and take a quick look at that. So that was Asus, not a big jump there. We went to Corsair, Ken and I did. They had, again, we talked about their products previously as well because the announcements went out. They had a new, what is it, HG110? No, H110 GT.
Yeah, GT.
Which is a new water cooler. They actually did some cool stuff to it that I guess I didn't realize. So the design of it is different now. Like the pump looks neater, right? And it doesn't add anything functionally, but it has looks like a metal plate on it with their logo and branding. The actual radiator itself has like a silver ring around it with their branding on it.
Instead of just a radiator.
Yeah, instead of just like that plain black radiator that everybody uses, it's got a little bit of design to it. The tubes that go from the radiator to the pump and back are now like they have a fabric sleeve around the other sleeve just to give it a little bit nicer touch there. And it's I think they said it would be like there was like 5 or 6 degrees better than the 110 or the 100. The standard thickness 240.
The 100.
The 100. Okay. With better pump, they're using Corsair 140L fans, like high quality, very low noise fans for it included with it, and then the pricing is the same as the 100 was. So, I'm sorry, is that exciting?
Yes.
Yeah.
They also had they announced this yesterday, the bracket for the GTX 700 series, like some of the 700 series, that allows you to mount an all-in-one cooler to your graphics card. They admitted it's late to the game. It's for 780, so it's hard for people to be buying a 780 and now also one of these devices. But it's a little interesting thing that they're working on one for the 970 and 980, and those will hopefully be here much shorter or much closer time period than to release than with the 970 on that. What else did we see there? The new Voyager GTX USB, Alan,
Yep.
is like it has like a metal body. It's actually it feels really cool.
It's pretty sexy.
We've got a post up, I think, that has that same picture.
Yeah, but like holding it feels
Yeah.
nice. Like it feels weighty and heavy. And they said they basically did that because they wanted people to know that the one with the SSD parts inside of it was more than just a standard USB
I don't know. I
thumb
kind of like that
drive.
the other one was light.
Yeah, maybe.
But
this one was. I like the way it looked. They had a new HX 1200i. They're actually replacing the AX 1200i power supply with the HX 1200i power supply.
what's the difference
Essentially,
between those two?
not much.
Oh,
Alan, I'm going to need you to actually talk into the microphone.
okay.
They not much really. It's a different OEM essentially.
All right.
Right. So that was, I'm trying to think, that was pretty much it, Corsair. And then the 100R, I think that was announced. But we have all news posts of this as Sebastian and Scott and those guys and Tim kind of went through. So they've got all the good information there. You went to Patriot, Alan. Did you see anything interesting there?
Let's see.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, all right. Well, first I went to ADATA. I think that was first this morning. So they have some interesting stuff coming using Silicon Motion 2256.
Is that new?
That is actually new. And actually, I swung by Silicon Motion yesterday, but it was kind of a blur. It was like one of the last things we did before rushing over to the digital experience thing.
Sure.
So, but the Silicon Motion 2256, right? The stuff we've reviewed so far is 2246.
Okay.
Right. 2256 is basically a triple level cell controller, like it's designed towards triple level cell.
Right.
And the interesting thing that I found was that this controller works with Samsung TLC, works with Toshiba TLC, works with SK Hynix TLC. And what they told me, which I'm still kind of like surprised about, is that all three of those TLCs style dies support having an SLC partition. So not just Samsung with their Evo, right? Apparently, all three of those
That's not
vendors.
very unique then.
Right. And this controller, this 2256, is able to handle that partitioning and basically do exactly what the Evo could do. Right. So this is a competing, not Samsung SSD that's on the horizon that can have, TLC, which is relatively low write speeds, but SLC cache for, certain number of gigabytes worth of continuous writing. So that's, that's
Okay.
kind of cool, right? ADATA also had they were showing a lot of other things that were like kind of, way over the horizon kind of things, like enterprise SSD with a whole bunch of solid state caps on it so it can reliably have power interrupted to it over and over and over again. That's what
As all things should be.
They actually had a demo running with like a microcontroller powering the SSD, and it was connected to a system, and it was just like pulling the power and then plugging it back in, basically doing the equivalent. and then when it while it was running, and then when it came back,
computer torture.
when it came back and the system re-recognized it, the system that was running was automatically doing like a parity check of a file, or some kind of a thing, basically like a test to make sure the data was still correct. Right?
I just keep thinking of the Windows disconnect, reconnect.
Basically, yeah, the poor system. That's exactly what it was doing, right? That's exactly what was going on. And they showed M.2 that they're working on coming out with, but it seems kind of like enterprisey first sort of thing. Not really, not
Okay.
not consumer yet. But
What controller?
they didn't even. I don't even think they said what the controller was on that one.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Just kind of random things, and then ADOT always has these other really, off the wall kind of things. They have different. You can change colors of LED light bulbs that they make, and all sorts of.
Sure.
That's not really.
Yeah, it's not really our wheelhouse.
Yeah, it's not really our
Yeah.
thing. They did have one thing that did catch my eye. External RAID 0 within an SSD, within 2.5-inch SSD enclosure, like basically an external 2.5-inch style, form factor SSD in a little mini box kind of thing, right?
Okay.
But it was USB 3.1 Type C,
There you go.
right? And supported 819 and 839 meg per second read and write, respectively.
I could plug that into my new MSI Z97 motherboard.
Yeah.
It'd be perfect.
Did they have a demo running, or was it just
no. This was
they
like
just said that's what
I don't
this
even think there was
performance
anything in that box,
Okay.
but they said that it was
Just say
coming.
we could steal it and then run over to MSI and plug it in and benchmark.
That was so
Nice.
that's a chicken and the egg thing. That thankfully we now have the egg and the chicken just in two separate places.
We should have those two meet.
Yes, we should.
Somebody running down the hallway. Okay, so Patriot or SanDisk, anything interesting there?
Let's see. Patriot's doing some kind of. They always have like a bunch of other random stuff. Like you would think that they just do memory and solid state.
Sure.
Now they have like iPhone cases and like
Yeah.
iPhone cases with like some kind of connector on the back, and then magnetized docks that you just like stick it to, and it like charges and stuff like
Yeah.
that. There's a bunch of that stuff, but
But
they did have a USB 3.0 external drive, which looked almost just like the Samsung T1, which had apparently been out for a little while, and I think is even like maybe even a little thinner
Doesn't look as cool.
than it. Yeah, it doesn't look as cool, but I mean, it doesn't go as fast either. Nowhere near the speed of
Oh, yeah.
the Samsung part, like half the speed roughly.
Yeah.
So there was that. I mean, at least that they did have something. They were showing UHS-2 SD card.
goes how fast?
UHS-2.
Yeah.
UHS-2, we talked about it, it was a while back we talked about it. It's basically an SD card where you usually have the front leading edge row of pins, but then UHS-2 actually has another row of pins.
Okay.
It's extra data connectors.
Faster.
All right.
All right.
So UHS-2, it's like this card is rated supposedly at 280 megabytes per second.
That SD card is?
Yes.
Nice.
But this was a dummy SD card.
Nice.
But like I guess that's what they're shooting for on that part. The spec itself can go up to a little over 300 meg per second, half duplex. Like that's the max. So that was interesting to see. Okay, it's like that yes, somebody has a UHS-2, SD card. That's cool, right? They didn't have it in mini form, micro form, but it was at least they have it and it's kind of coming, right? There were some other companies which I saw today, which do have. Wow, I can't even talk.
It's good. It's fine. You're good.
Which do have UHS-2 micro SD, and that is Lexar.
Huh.
Lexar's pretty big in the SD card stuff, right? Lexar is Crucial / Micron's, consumer camera SD card kind of offshoot, right? So they had those. They showed a 1000X rated SDHC card.
1000X rated.
Yeah. So okay.
That's,
So that
Movies at one time.
So translation.
That's some really bad
translation,
stuff you're watching.
The X, whatever X rating of an SD card is a throwback from CD-ROMs. Why it's still sticking around, I don't know. But CD-ROM 1X is 150K per second. So if you times 1,000, 150 meg per second, right? It's simple enough when it's just an even 1,000 like that. But this was remember that a couple months back I was all excited about like that Lexar really like tiny micro SDHC card reader that's like barely bigger than the USB port.
Sure.
And you just slide the card in. And the performance was like, 100 meg per second. Like really good performance for like really tiny, provided the card could do it, right?
Yep.
So this guy, same exact form factor, card reader and card now available or coming soon, and at 150 meg per second. So things are going like even faster for like a really tiny, really tiny SD card that can go that fast. It's who knows what you're going to plug it into right now. Like
Right.
smartphones don't have UHS 2 ports in them, and I don't think they're going to have them soon, really either. But again, cool things that are coming, right? That are like faster speed to transfer data, like SneakerNet kind of stuff.
Never heard of it.
Crucial also had, they have their DDR4.
Cool.
Right, that's Micron's
memory
thing,
yep.
right? DDR4 they were showing.
I've heard of that.
So MX200.
Ooh, we like the MX100.
MX200 is kind of going to be an M600
Oh no.
for consumer.
Oh,
I know.
no.
Yeah. Okay, so the M600 was the thing with the dynamic
Right,
cache
the dynamic
thing.
flash that adjusts between SLC and MLC.
Yeah, it could flip the dies between SLC and MLC mode. So they're trying to carry that over into this, and I kind of voiced the concerns that we voiced when we did the review to them. Hopefully, they said that the firmware is different now. We'll know when we actually do the review of them when we get samples,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So here's hoping, I guess, because it is a good idea. On paper, it was always a good idea.
Yes, very much so.
So there's MX200. There's a BX100, which is supposed to kind of sort of replace the MX. Kind of like they're going for the really low cost SSD on that, right? And as a matter of fact, I think that's like the Silicon Motion 2246. I think is the controller in there. So they're not even using the Marvell controller for like they usually do, right? So it sounds like they're just trying to do their best to get the cost down. And they were talking about launching like around 40 cents a gig all the way up to a terabyte, I think, with that, or somewhere around there.
How about 20 cents?
No, not 20.
How about
350?
But 40s.
No, not 350.
But 40 cents a gig is pretty good. I mean, for launch MSRPs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's good to see launch MSRPs from additional companies, right? That are pretty low.
It's a video. It's a video.
What else did we do in this whole storage chunk of stuff? OCZ.
We can come back to you, so you take a break.
Yeah, okay, I'll take a breather.
Take a
Go
break.
ahead. Yeah.
Josh, did you go see Zotac?
Yes, I went and saw Zotac. Thanks for making me talk because I don't yawn nearly as much
I know.
when talking.
Anything interesting at Zotac?
Zotac they're doing interesting cards, especially with this 970-980 generation.
Okay.
Usually they're the ones who were oddly enough at the beginning that were in stock. I know that heard some good and bad things about their products, but I think overall they're about average in terms of RMAs and quality.
Sure.
But they have the great casings. They have multiple fans. They overbuild the cards. Their amp versions have things like voltage monitoring, where you plug in a USB micro cable and then plug that into a USB port, download their software, and you can monitor all these other voltages that some other ones don't actually do. We haven't really reviewed much of their stuff, but maybe that's something that they would like to change.
That sounds cool.
One of the more interesting ones is, so they make these higher end cards, the amp and the amp exclamation point, and I can't remember all the different branding that they have. But they didn't have anything that was more reference like, but still was Zotac. So they kind of took it down a notch with the 970. It still uses their own PCB design board. I think it doesn't. No, it does have a backplate. Less, smaller cooling, and instead of 2x8 PCIe, it's got 2x6. So you can still overclock it. It's still got a high clock speed coming out of the box, but you're not going to have the really high overclocks that you need with like LN2, water cooling,
Sure.
stuff like that people would use these boards for. And they're offering it at a much lower price. So you get a reference price of $329. I think that's still reference price, and you get all these extras that Zotac is giving you with this board. So they're getting a bit more aggressive with their price points, and they'd like to make a bigger impact in at least the North American market.
Yeah.
And so I got to talk to them, and they had a bunch of their new Z boxes. So they're going with some of the next generation of Intel
Broadwell
products,
U stuff.
Broadwell U. And they're still they still have AMD offerings, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They do?
They do. A4s and I think A6s, depending on the box.
I thought you were talking GPUs. I was real confused for a second.
No, we go to the
Z-boxes.
Z box. They had
That's cool.
the Death Star globe,
That one is
Z-Box
pretty cool.
thingy. It's kind of fun.
Is it actually Star Wars branded?
No, it is not. But people did make mods out of it, and of course, somebody did make a Death Star
Of course, yes.
out of it. Had all kinds of lights poking out.
Why
It
not?
was- Yeah, yeah. They should, get those lime green toothpicks and have a laser blowing up Alderaan. That would be a lot more fun. Yeah. So they got a lot of little things going on there. I'll write about more. But they're a thriving little company that would like to make a bigger impact.
What about NZXT?
NZXT, I can't talk about.
Cool. I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. After that would be what? Sapphire.
Sapphire.
Sapphire's a little disappointed.
Okay.
Because AMD has not been released chips. They don't say that, but they're like, sorry, we don't have anything really new. We've got one of our top end. What is their branding? I forget.
Sapphire. Tri-X.
The Tri-X.
Tri-X.
I think so. But they have one of their top end 290X that they've redesigned. It's again a very beefy card. They've got the 10mm heat pipes. And like an 8mm and also 2 5s. So you've got 5 heat pipes coming out of there, plus the vapor plate. And it's just such an overbuilt, heavy cooler. I mean, you can kind of overclock that thing to the moon as compared to other 290Xs.
They actually have... They're probably the best of the AMD partners at this point right now. So
they're
up there.
I think MSI may kind of...
MSI seems to have more favor towards the NVIDIA side of things for right now. So they go back and forth depending on who's got what product to sell. So
as Sebastian. Well, that we don't have to go into that. But Sebastian, his coil wine was actually his PSU and not the Lightning card.
Correct.
Anyway, but that has nothing to do
Slander.
with Sapphire. The other one was, of course, the R9 285 Mini ITX that they have. It's a really overbuilt cooler on this pretty small card. We may be getting one here soon to compare against MSI and the Asus Mini ITX. People seem somewhat excited about that, but the R9 285 is not been the biggest seller for AMD, primarily because they released it, and then we saw the 970 and 980 come out pretty shortly after that. So it while it was a little bit more efficient, it had
anything we can do? Nope. Okay.
It had better, a little more efficient. Had more, had the XDMA and True Audio. But it was not the big jump that we saw with the Maxwell.
Okay. All
So
right.
that was Sapphire. And Diamond Multimedia, they're kind of in the same thing. They would like to sell more video cards, but there are no real refresh models. So around their place, they have a kind of wireless mirroring box that they showed off. So you connect to it wirelessly, and the box is connected to the TV, and then you can mirror your thing. You can actually share that, so you can swap through whoever is mirroring on the screen for education meetings, stuff like that. They actually have kind of a cool video capture, a 1080p video capture box that accepts composite or component.
Component like red, blue, green.
Red, blue, green. Yeah. Component, HDMI. And you can actually plug mic in there and do real-time talking. So this is like, the YouTubers who
Never
are
heard of
playing
them.
their game, and, they just want an easy way to encode video.
Yeah.
They can use this box. It's got a on-off button. It's like, I want to record. You hit the button. You just start recording video.
Right.
So it plugs into your computer. It's really nice. They have a couple other little components, but those were kind of the interesting ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Real quick here, if you're watching the live stream, it looks like it's going up and down, so you may or may not be seeing this. So it looks like it's getting data now. So like I said, the LTE here goes in and out we really can't do much about that because the hotel is way worse in all that regard. So if you miss any of this, don't worry, you can go back and watch it all later, like multiple times on YouTube. So we went to Cooler Master, right? And they didn't have a whole bunch of new stuff. What they did have new that was really cool was, so if you remember, there was a technology we talked about on the podcast in multiple places, I think, it was kind of like developed by Sandia Labs, right? And the idea was making a heatsink that uses the metal of the heatsink to actually move the air. So use the aluminum or whatever it happens to be. In this case, it's aluminum to actually move the air across itself and the rest of the heatsink. And so we have cool chip technology. Is that what it was called?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is now a company that is licensed that, and they're implementing it, and they've partnered with Cooler Master to start releasing heat sinks based on this technology coming up this year. Hopefully, maybe even as soon as Computex. And we have some pictures. We don't have anything online as we watch this live, but you'll see the photos there. And some video of this at work. And it's really, really, really cool. So it's basically, you imagine you have an aluminum plate, right, that rests on the processor. It's your heat plate, if you will. And then it has a rod that goes straight up in the middle. And then inside that, like right around that, you have a little motor. And you put on top of it another part of the heatsink that actually has fins kind of made into it, right? And then that motor spins the top portion of the heatsink in a direction that moves air across it. Now, what it does is when those two pieces of metal meet, you'll see grooves in between them, and they're using like they kind of come together like saw teeth or alligator teeth, whatever you want to say, and they come together, not quite touching, but very, very close. And then as it spins, it pulls that heat up out of that plate onto the rest of the heatsink, and then the air that it's moving through the top portion kind of cools it all. And the idea is you can get much quieter and much more, much smaller heat sinks that can do the same job as traditional air coolers, but better and in smaller places. Right? Server workloads is one area. Obviously, that's why Sandia was looking into it, but they're looking at bringing it into consumers. They're not looking to. They're going to. They're going to bring it to consumers, right? It's a pretty cool technology, and it's really neat looking as well. Ken would have totally lost several fingers by now, though, had we been using this realistically.
And maybe a tongue.
Maybe a tongue.
Yeah.
I don't know. So there was that, and they had some new power supply stuff that they're showing off, Bluetooth-enabled power supplies, so that you can monitor your power supply in real time, maybe even log data.
So it's kind of like computers are getting their own OBD2 sensor.
That's
Just
one way of
plug it
looking at
in,
yeah.
and you get stats on everything.
There's just a little, so this was like a dev kit, and there's just a little board with an ARM processor and a Bluetooth module sticking out the back of the power supply.
Right.
Put an ARM processor in everything, and it'll all be good.
Correct. Sure, why not?
I know a company would be very happy about that.
ARM?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Then why not?
Intel.
Oh, sad face. So that was Cooler Master. We'd already talked about the new stuff at Samsung, right? Was there anything else, Alan, at Samsung? Or
Let's see, other new stuff.
we had the little portable hard drive, but
They just had some other upgrades to like their micro and SD card stuff
Okay.
lines, but that's not really significant.
okay.
They didn't do any. I didn't see any UHS-2.
Okay,
So-
gotcha. We did go see Intel, and they showed off the new Broadwell-based NUC, and that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's smaller, it's faster, it's got M.2 port, fast by 4 M.2.
Wi-Fi is soldered onto the board now, so it's
Yep.
included.
Yep, Wi-Fi is included. You don't have to worry about adding that in. Same prices as the previous models. Nothing changes there. The power brick is smaller. It's a much more efficient and cool-looking device. But I think by far the most interesting thing we saw was the Intel Compute Stick, which is it's a thumb. It looks like a thumb drive, but it's larger. The base of it is a little bit larger, and instead of a USB drive, it has an HDMI port on it, and the HDMI port is to be plugged into a TV. And then inside the stick is a Bay Trail processor, 2 gigs of memory, 32 gigs of eMMC storage, 802.11n, 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth support. So you basically have a Bay Trail computer that you can plug into your TV. If it has what's the HDMI standard that allows power? MHL. If the TV has MHL, it will power on the device while it is No?
They said that's second gen.
Oh, second gen?
Yeah.
Okay. So it does require a USB power, but most TVs have a USB port on the back of them now anyway.
Yeah, you can use USB 2.0 port, like 500 milliamp.
Yeah, 500 milliamps all it needs. And so it's going to ship for $149 with Windows 8.1 with Bing.
It's a computer.
It's a whole computer. Right? You use Bluetooth to connect your keyboard mouse, and you basically have a computer connected to a TV or a monitor for that point, right? Anything that has an HDMI port. I posited that we should plug it into the back of an Xbox One and have it be the pass-through.
Yo, dog, I heard you like x86.
Yeah.
So we put x86 in your x86.
What else we got? And they're gonna have a Linux version that has 1 gig of RAM, 8 gigs of storage, $89, I think. Right? That's damned impressive, really, to get that kind of capability out of it. So, go ahead. You were gonna say something?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. The Chromecast, and those things. It's going to be a nice little extra.
It's nothing like a Chromecast.
No, I know that, but I'm just talking about we have the functionality of the Chromecast and those little things, but a stick that's only slightly bigger.
We're going to run out of HDMI ports.
Yeah, I know. It's a fully functioning computer that can do lots of stuff.
Yeah. It looks pretty neat. What was the new stuff at OCZ, Alan? You were going to mention?
There was that Jet Express SSD controller. That's their
new controller. Okay.
Yeah, 10-channel controller. So not 8 like normal, right?
That's more than.
It's more than 8. So they're shooting more for enterprise with this, obviously, right off the bat. But it's M.2, form factor. It's not the M.2 2280. It's longer. I forget what the next highest increment is, but it's the longer one. The one they were showing had, it had extra caps on it for power loss protection and all that other stuff. Like definitely a beefy enterprise kind of SSD, but in a really tiny, like thin, M.2 isn't exactly a big PCB.
No.
It supports SATA and PCIe, and along the PCIe route, it also supports NVMe, right, for the protocol instead of AHCI, which is cool. Basically, they're trying to throw everything possible at one controller that they have developed so that it can support everything you could possibly need, right?
Cool.
And the link on PCIe is PCIe 3.0 by 4. So not 2.0 by 4, which is what typical M.2 is, right? And we don't have a lot more detail than that, right? We don't have any kind of specs, like performance specs or anything like that, but 10-channel controller, it's potentially a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah.
To be able to throw at the PC there. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. And then there was also something that we're going to be testing soon, which is a Vector 180. It's basically just an updated Vector. Not really sure if the performance will be any better. I would imagine they're tweaking their firmware a little bit further, and just probably to the point where they wanted to make it a new model. And they're adding some degree of power loss protection in there. They're just calling it power failure management, which I think is just enough capacitance built into the drive for it to make sure the metadata never gets corrupted. Right? I don't think they're really covering like in-flight data. I think they're just covering make sure that the drive shuts down gracefully.
Gotcha.
If you get power loss, when it's not expected. And that was pretty much it for OCZ.
All right. So our last stop for the day was at AMD.
Yes.
We talked about a few things. We talked about Carrizo for a little bit, which is we're allowed to talk about that, right?
Yeah, they didn't really.
We are now.
Yeah.
We didn't get that much information. It's basically their new replacement for Kaveri, essentially.
Correct. It's there's two two flavors of Carrizo. Carrizo L, which is going to replace Kabini.
Okay.
And then there's just Carrizo, which is going to replace, the mobile Kaveri. What they're doing, which is kind of interesting, is they're going to have one infrastructure for both chips.
Okay.
So you don't have to have a different socket or a different ball grid array. One motherboard and any kind of laptop is going to work with either chip. So they can have the really low power, 15 to 25 watt. I think it's actually 10 watt but anyway, they didn't go into actual numbers of the Carrizo L.
No, not yet.
Or you could have the higher powered, just regular Carrizo, and they're both SoCs. Southbridge is integrated on both. They're going to do some really interesting things with 4K. They've got built-in
H.265 decode.
Yeah. That they showed it side by side against an Intel that was doing 4K, 30 frames per second.
Bay Trail.
Bay Trail, and it just wasn't,
Couldn't do it.
Yeah, but
No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Bay Trail.
I thought it was an i.
It was Core i5.
Yeah, Core i5.
Yeah.
But it was, it was pegging the CPU
Yeah.
and just not able to do it. But the built-in hardware with the latest UBD that will be hosted in Carrizo was doing it really nicely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, energy efficiency. It'll be a next-generation GCN architecture. It's going to support obviously DirectX 12, Mantle, all the goodies, but they didn't want to go into any of the real details. They're going to do that at ISSC in February.
Yeah.
And
Server conference.
yeah, that's it. They're going to go over the architecture a little bit more. They say that it's going to be a mid-year product, so that's going to be Computex plus or minus. Well, Computex plus probably a couple of weeks,
Right.
But we'll hear more about it soon. So that was kind of interesting to see that they've actually got new products coming down utilizing Excavator and a more unified mobile platform with the really low power to just regular kind of laptop power.
Right. Yeah, you're right. And then I think, let's see, we need to talk about FreeSync. Probably.
Do we?
I mean, we should, I guess. I think some people are interested in it. So this was the first chance we've had. They had 3 FreeSync monitors on display at their suite there. And it was an LG 21:9 ratio 2560 by 1080 screen. They had a Samsung 4K 28-inch screen, and then they had a BenQ 27-inch 25 by 14 screen. The BenQ was a TN. The other two were actually IPS or AHVH. No. One?
Some IPS-like technology.
AHVA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have to make you learn this by the end of the week. It's going to be
AHVA.
important.
What's it stand for? Anybody know?
I don't know.
That would help. Anyway,
advanced something.
Good quality.
Vertical alignment.
Almost IPS, we'll say. That sounded pretty good, though.
Horizontal, vertical alignment?
Yeah, those are words.
No, because PVA. But anyway,
So,
go ahead.
Okay, so we saw FreeSync and it worked for the most part. It worked pretty well, but it's different in some key ways, right? So the 21:9 and the 4K monitor were 60 hertz displays. The TN panel, the BenQ panel, is 144 hertz display. Now, what is also important is you have to know that these monitors are going to be rated with minimum refresh rates, and it's not like minimum frame rates necessarily, but it's the minimum amount of time that the display will allow the panel to not be refreshed. This is actually the case on G-Sync monitors. It's just kind of worked around in a little bit different way. So even though these monitors on display had minimums, AMD claims that these are still firmwares in development and that these could be adjusted before release, probably in the next 30 to 60 days or so. The 4K monitor, we'll just use that as a primary example, has a minimum of 40 hertz and a maximum of 60 hertz, obviously, since it was a 60 hertz panel. And that means that the variable refresh portion of FreeSync only works between 40 and 60 frames per second. Are you guys having a conversation over chat over there?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
texting Ken and whispering sweet nothings in his
I really
ear.
do
You
appreciate
really
it.
shouldn't send me those pictures while we're on the podcast.
I probably shouldn't, but they're fun.
So you've got this window of variable refresh on this panel. And what AMD has decided to do, maybe not just AMD, but what the Adaptive Sync standard has decided to do, is that when you are inside that window, you get no tearing and you get smooth animation, right? You're going to have the frame delivered at to the screen at the same rate that the game is rendering it. Now, if your game renders at 70 frames per second or your game renders at 30 frames per second on that particular monitor, you are outside that window. And then you have the option to enable or disable VSync. And that setting actually takes hold when you're outside that VRR window. So if you're running at 70 frames per second and you have VSync enabled, then you will be running at 60 hertz, which is the maximum refresh rate of the monitor, and it would act just like VSync on would, right? You get whatever input latency is added there, whatever potential stutter or judder would be added there. If you decide to have VSync turned off, you get the same experience you would there, right? At 70 frames per second, you would see horizontal tearing on the screen, but you would have no input latency, and the frames would show up as soon as they were ready, kind of like we have seen for years and years and years with VSync off. Now, the same thing happens under 40, right? If you're rendering at 30, then if VSync is on, you're rendering with VSync on, no tearing, but input latency, whatever that happens to be. And then if you have it off, you'll see horizontal tearing, but no input latency or whatever, right? Now that it leaves some interesting questions about like what happens when you go under that minimum level, right? Are you going to see judder? Is there going to be a transition between that? If you are transitioning between that frequently, if you're going between 35 and 45 a lot on that particular monitor in a particular scene, what happens? What is the experience like as it transitions between that? We didn't really have the capability to do that.
Yeah.
Because the demos they had set up did go below the minimum. Probably not an accident, but we'll have monitors soon and we'll be able to tell. And I think that's important, right? Because NVIDIA has worked very hard to find a way to get around that judder.
Yeah. The first generation NVIDIA panel
Had the problem.
actually had that problem at that condition.
Right. And since they have fixed it.
Yeah, they fixed that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we don't know we don't know for sure if FreeSync will have that same problem, but we do
Right.
know that they didn't tell us that it didn't. They didn't have an answer to it.
Yeah.
Right. And it just enabling VSync is not enough, right? Because if you go from 40 and then all of a sudden you're rendering a game at 38, right? There's
Yeah.
no 38 with VSync on. You would just drop straight to 30. So would that show up as a judder? Would you be able to notice that?
You would think, but
You would think.
We'll see.
We don't know. Or if you jump down to 25, what happens, right? So
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting to give the user the option of what happens when you are outside that range, because G-Sync has a range effectively, right?
Yeah.
30 to 60 on that Acer. It's 30 hertz to 60 hertz on that Acer 4K panel. But what they do is if you're rendering over 60 frames per second, it's just like VSync on, period. You don't get the option of disabling VSync and having it go back to tearing, right? And if you're under that, you don't see tearing at all. And they attempt to fix it through other algorithms, right, about how they're delivering frames and at what rate they're delivering frames. So it's very interesting. We saw like one potential issue with one of the demos they had about, like it was rendering at 60 and at the upper limit, and it's a much more, I don't want to say it's a much more confusing thing, but it's more there's more knobs to turn and look at now, because with G-Sync, disabling or enabling VSync itself doesn't even do anything, but with FreeSync it does. It has an effect on the experience.
Yeah.
And people will have to determine if it's a good experience or if they prefer what the way NVIDIA's done. I think offering options is mostly good. So we'll see how that goes. Nothing on pricing, availability, like.
but hey, it was working. We sell it. It's not vaporware. It will be shipping.
Yeah,
soon.
it's absolutely working.
I absolutely
right?
believe that now.
Yeah. They absolutely have it. And I also had an interesting thing. This will be in our write up that I'm working on right before that we recorded this. is we talked yesterday a little bit about that MG monitor, whose model number I don't know, from Asus, that is not a G-Sync, but it's 120 hertz IPS 25x14 that supports adaptive sync, DisplayPort 1.2a plus, and AMD said to me very explicitly that even if it is not branded a FreeSync monitor, if it adheres to the standard, it will work with their hardware.
They will not block it.
They're not blacklisting and they're not whitelisting displays, right? What they want to do is certify things that provide a better experience. For example, the idea came up that a monitor could come out and brand itself as variable refresh, and it only have a 5 hertz window where it does it. And that would meet the standard. It would meet the spec.
This window is provided by the monitor, by the way.
The window is provided by the monitor vendor. The scalar hardware. Like, it's a hardware limit.
Just like how when you plug a monitor into a system right now, it says the monitor tells the system, okay, these are the refresh rates I can do.
Yeah.
Right. This is just another parameter that gets passed to the system.
Right. So it'd be possible for a monitor vendor to create an EDID that gives it a 5 hertz variable window, and it would work. But that's not really useful. Right. And so AMD doesn't want to maybe have that FreeSync brand associated with it. So that's where the kind of the marketing, the kind of what word I'm looking at, the program to
standards?
Approve the things. Yeah.
Standards body.
Yeah, it's not really standards, but certification process.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
A logo.
On my end.
Yeah.
But so that means what I said was like, so if this Asus monitor supports adaptive sync, it will work. And they said yes. So there, we had that confirmed, right? Like, it will work on AMD hardware if it adheres to the standards, and that's good news for everybody else out there. And it doesn't mean, so now we know that just because a monitor doesn't say it's FreeSync capable doesn't mean it's not.
Which kind of sucks, because if a manufacturer doesn't necessarily put DP 1.2a plus adaptive sync on
I
the
imagine
box,
they will say like variable refresh capable or something like that.
Maybe
that will be a thing, and then we will have to ask like, well, what's your minimum, what's your maximum, right? And that's a new spec. That's on us.
Or maybe like they're just buying a scaler out of the box that supports it, and they don't even necessarily realize it or know what they're doing, and a monitor can do it, but it's never mentioned in the materials.
It could,
which it would be a nice surprise, but
that's on us. That's on the monitor vendors.
Yeah, but we can't cover every monitor.
No, but it shouldn't be on AMD, right? If it's an open standard, they shouldn't have to approve it, right? That's the whole idea. And they say that there's zero cost for certification. They say there's zero cost for the FreeSync brand. It's still quote free, right? And I think that's very important, right? And they're still saying that these monitors are not going to be more expensive just because they have FreeSync. Now, will 120 hertz IPS panel 25x14 probably be expensive from Asus? Probably, right? But it's not because of DisplayPort 1.2a, Visa standards or whatever.
It's not because they have to pay AMD some amount of money to.
Right. They don't have to add any. Maybe the new scalers that support it are a little bit more expensive, but all of the scalers will be like that way. So, it was great to see it. Like, I was glad to see it in person. I'm glad to see it work. We still have a lot of technical questions. We still have a lot of business side questions. We still have questions of when it's actually going to be available, and when you guys will be able to buy it. I tried to let me take one out of the suite to say I just need to do some tests on this. Trust me, it'll be fine. And they didn't really go for that. So, it's pretty. It was interesting. It was interesting. I'm not 100% happy. I'm not 100% sad, but I'm more happy than I'm sad. I don't know what that means.
That's good, because choice is key.
It is, and the price of G-Sync monitors tells me that we need to have this competition. That AMD needs to have these monitors, and these guys need to come out with this at lower prices.
It's not really choice, because you're still locked in.
It's not choice. It's not choice for monitor to monitor, but it is choice now from platform to platform, from
technology
vendor to vendor,
technology.
Right? The next time people go to upgrade their monitor, next time people go to upgrade their monitor, they have to make the decision. Am I going to go now that I have to decide, I'm going to get an AMD or an NVIDIA GPU, right? Well, okay, if NVIDIA monitors are $300 more expensive than AMD monitors, hell, I can get a second graphics card for that,
Yeah, but that's not really choice.
It's not an open standard, but it's a choice you have to make.
Because adaptive sync will only work with AMD and G-Sync will only work with NVIDIA. So you make the choice once and then follow up with the next. So you make the choice and then you buy the other product, right? You either buy a GPU and then buy the monitor, and then buy the GPU.
Correct.
So it's still one choice.
But it's a choice.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's like I can go with NVIDIA,
even
or
if I have
can
an
go to
NVIDIA,
AMD.
even if I have an NVIDIA card now, I could choose to say I don't want to spend $300 extra on a monitor, so I'm going to buy an AMD card and thus get the FreeSync monitor.
Yeah, but you don't. What?
It's not intercompatible for
It's
sure.
like I want
it's
a
a package
Citroen
deal.
that has all metric bolts,
I think-
or I'm going to get a Ford with all English standard.
It's a platform now.
I think Ken's trying to argue that it's not a common thing in people's minds to do a GPU and
Correct.
display at the same time.
It would be a choice if I could buy an adaptive sync monitor and it work on NVIDIA.
I think the term choice is probably it's like it would be. I don't know. It would be better.
It's not
for
a
sure.
checkbox for either one anymore, unless you're talking about price. So if they can both do VRR, then okay, you can take that out of your decision, except for price.
That's true.
Except for price, and which
is a big thing.
There will be different monitors, like some monitors.
Yeah.
G-Sync might have that one flagship awesome monitor, right? But maybe it's not. Maybe it's adaptive sync, and there's still a possibility. I still believe deep down somewhere that NVIDIA wants to support adaptive sync.
Well, they're going to come out with a card that will support 1.2 plus or whatever.
He has very
Not yet.
specifically said that they don't want to support that because you can. It's not a required part of the Visa standard.
Yeah.
It is an optional part, right?
And not only that, but the gist was they can't get the same experience. Like they're going for a specific kind of experience with
Not sure that's the case.
their G-Sync.
It may have been the case initially,
Yeah.
being able to control both sides of the thing, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Couple of things I missed. One thing is that
Go for it.
Carrizo is going to be the first fully HSA compliant
Right.
part. We kind of discovered through a sideways that Kaveri was not entirely HSA compliant because when they designed it and was released, the full specification was not nailed down. So Carrizo is going to be the first one that. Also, we did talk about some desktop stuff. FXs are still the CPUs of choice for a person who wants performance. They do have a new APU coming out, the A8 7650K. It's a 4-core and a 6 GPU
I don't know.
unit. Yeah,
I wasn't in that meeting.
yeah, but $105. It's going to be inexpensive, and it kind of just slots in there in between a couple other models. But other than that, the one thing that they're excited about is DirectX 12 and Mantle. They're all multi-threaded, and of course, at every price point, AMD seems to have more threads available to them, even though Intel has better IPC.
Sure.
And so they're kind of hoping that DirectX 12 will help level the playing field when it comes to gaming. That AMD will consistently have more threads available
Yeah.
than Intel does at any price point. But we'll
Maybe.
see if that actually comes into play. But that's about it.
All right. That's all the stuff that we did. There's actually a lot more news and coverage on the website if you go there. That Scott and Sebastian and Tim and Jeremy and maybe more and stuff have been adding there. Like Razer has a VR dev kit now. Hey, and they have an Android gaming streaming device, so you can go read about those things. The Be Quiet announced new low profile heat sinks. Lydon has. I think we already talked about that. The Dell XPS 13 is a kick-ass laptop. We couldn't talk about it last night because it was
That was one of the more impressive designs I've seen in a while.
It's a Broadwell U system that is the size of Ken's MacBook Air, the MacBook Air set perfectly inside of it.
But it
vice
doesn't have
versa.
this gigantic bezel.
But it has
None of that.
that's an 11-inch screen, right?
Yeah.
And the Dell
11.6.
The Dell has a 13-inch screen, so you get a 13-inch screen in the same space.
And now I'm sad.
The trackpad was really, really nice. Like it was a super sexy machine. 5.7 millimeter bezels here, and it's available starting at $12.99 with a 19x10 matte finish screen, or you can go up to as high as $16.99 when you start to do things like go to the 3200 by 1800 screen. But that does have gloss and touch. Did they all have touch? No, I think the lower end did not have touch.
Lower end did not. It's just the higher.
Which is actually, I think I want that.
Yeah.
$12.99, that sounds awesome for that. They also had the Dell Venue 8 7000 8-inch Atom tablet. This is using 3580. Another super incredibly thin, super small bezel device that's really cool. It's running Android. Check out that video as well. That is
60 by 1600 OLED display.
Yeah, 2560 by 1600, 8.9 inch OLED display, 8.4 inch. Yeah, 8.4 inch OLED display. Looked super awesome, super sharp, super bright. We got a video on the homepage for that. Trying to think what else. There's a whole bunch of Corsair news here, like we talked about, new GTX devices, new cases, the water cooling stuff. Just kind of browsing through the homepage. Report, apparently NVIDIA Maxwell GM206 pictures leaked, which was apparently GTX 960. I don't know anything about that. Kingston HyperX Predator PCIe SSD launched.
Talked about that yesterday.
Did we? Okay. I see stuff we talked about yesterday. So
we didn't say the Neutron XT officially launched.
Right. We have a review of that.
That was this morning. We reviewed that a month or two ago.
Yep.
I think it was November.
Yep.
Actually launched. Pricing seemed a little higher than I was hoping for, considering the performance wasn't like the best.
And it looks like Sebastian just posted on the front page EVGA teasing GTX 980 with all-in-one liquid cooling. So there you go. Not quite the 3 liquid coolers in a suitcase that Gigabyte offered, but definitely looks pretty nice. MSRP of $799 for the GTX 980 Hydro.
$799.
So I'll see that tomorrow when we go visit with EVGA for sure. So that's going to round up our episode here, which will mark the last CES podcast we do from this location.
No more pretty pictures behind us.
No more pretty pictures of the
No more
horn mirrors or whatever. You didn't realize those were mirrors, huh?
Oh, I remember.
Oh, you remembered. So the reason we'll be here tomorrow. We'll be here all day tomorrow, but we're actually leaving on red-eye flights out. Josh is leaving in the afternoon tomorrow. We'll try to record up an audio podcast with me and Ken and Alan, maybe like at the airport or something, because we'll have a little bit of time between our last meeting and when our flights actually leave. But it will not be live, probably.
No, it will not be.
Ken says no. Boo. So we'll record that and we'll have it up. So if you want to find that, go to pcpro.com/podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our RSS feeds there. And we want to thank you guys for hanging out. Sorry about the connectivity issues with the live stream if you were watching that. But if you missed stuff, we'll have this up on YouTube tonight or on, again, at pcpro.com/podcast. So we thank you guys for hanging out with us during CES. And that's it, I guess. Everybody say bye. Bye. We'll see you at home in our regular places with our normal backgrounds.
Oh,
I know, it's very sad. I'll miss you guys. Not really. Bye.
Good night.